Welcome back to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're talking with radio personality and voiceover talent Bobby Ocean. Now, last time we found out who some of the Boss Brothers were, and who are some of the other Boss Brothers in addition to Jim Carson, Joe Collins, and Shao Stevens?
Joe Collins was, I know we never worked together. We knew each other since the 70s. I'd go up to visit my friends at KFRC, and he was a friend of the station. And he's worked a lot of places from San Francisco to L.A. and so on. So he knows a lot of people, and I've just known him for so long, but been out of touch because as a disc jockey, I'm completely locked in, and I've got one thing on my mind. Couldn't even, remember to tell my wife when I'd be home or anything in those days. So now that I'm retired, I'm getting to see all these faces and see the other dimension of what it is that I did. I knew we did a good job. I knew we had good ratings and all that business, but I never really got to see a lot of how we touched people. Here in Modesto, they think of KFRC as their own local station. So I got people walking up to me when I went to the Classic Car Show this weekend with the KFRC mobile studio. People walking up to me telling me, you gave me a trip to Hawaii when I was a girl listening to KFRC. And I'm going, now I get to see what you look like. Amazing stuff.
That's great.
I didn't know I had to. I thought that I didn't pass the baton very well. I was selfishly doing my show to the topmost of my ability, but turns out that was the baton.
That's great. And, it's nice to hear those stories because oftentimes, sometimes the DJ does know, but other times they don't know until years later what a positive effect they had on a listener. And so that's always great to hear stories like that. Now, after 136 KGB, you went to crosstown rival 1170 KCBQ. Tell us how you went from those.
Total KGB. We totally beat them. We beat them so thoroughly. We humbled them. They couldn't find anything in their whole rating to be number one in. Any demographic, no nothing. We just got them good.
Wow.
What we did was we just handed them back their own format. We understood it. We could never get Bill Drake to let us do more stuff. He was very tight. Mm-hmm. And at KCBQ, we did a little bit more stuff, but we really just did the Drake format and handed it back to him, where between records at KGB, they had a jingle saying more music, KGB, and we had listeners on the phone between records going, KCBQ plays less commercials. Bam, another record would come on. Same thing, more music. And we kicked their ass.
That's amazing.
Just by doing it in a fresher way. Again, rewriting is really a valuable thing to learn. You take something that's worked and you rewrite it and just play it back again,
Oh, yeah. In fact, in 1971, KHJ, which you eventually went to, dropped the name Boss Radio because the name Boss Radio had become dated and became the Big 93 for a while. And so there's you said an example of rewriting the book, if you will, or trying to rewrite and alter things in order to make it fresh. And oftentimes, they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it starts breaking, then you got to fix it, even though I can hold on for a little bit more. I remember somebody working for, I'll mention what the heck. I mean, she said she worked for Aero 93, Mary Price, and she said, we started off really strong, but then, we didn't continue adding on to it, and the ratings kept going down. She kept on saying, Tommy, let's add some, let's just keep it as is. She says, yeah, but the ratings are going down. And so she says, I think that's why eventually the station went away, is because, and then of course Tommy left, and then a new program director came in. It was just kind of it was on autopilot and not really being taken care of. And so that was the end of the Arrow, unfortunately. But that happens to a lot of stations, like the Mighty Met KMET was another thing as well. They didn't, they got one bad program director after another after Sam Bellamy was let go, and every new idea was worse than the previous one instead of getting back to the roots of it and stuff. So
I was pretty fortunate to work for some really great program directors. So I can tell immediately when the program director is not up to that caliber. There's very few brilliant programmers. And, you know, a lot of the Drake program directors were just following orders. They didn't have any ideas of their own. And in fact, I even had Paul Drew steal ideas from me.
Oh, goodness.
Because having the idea and having, you know, seeing more depth into it, I think that's very valuable. You can't just run the same thing all the time. You have to update yourself, rewrite yourself. There's that rewriting again. Everybody does it. I mean, the classic example would be Burger King. Mm-hmm. They have one jingle after the other. Hell, we even copied their jingle. We do it for you. So learn, rewrite all the time. That's what they're doing. They're always rewriting it, making it something. But it's the same stinking hamburger.
That's true.
Yeah. So what you do is you just freshen it up. And that's easy because in radio, you can do it with words. If it was TV, you need a whole big budget. Well, we got to redo the news studio all over again. That's costly. But in radio, I can just say, well, I'm coming to you from our brand new studios.
And people will believe it, basically.
They don't have to disbelieve it. It's just noise. It's just a sentence, and it's a story.
Kind of reminds me of back in 2005. I'd read that Johnny K was taking over as program director of KEarth 101. Jay Coffey had been program director for about 4 years, and the station had basically become stale. And Coffey even admitted later on, he's like, well, I wasn't program directing just was not my thing. And Johnny K.
So I'm telling you about the good program directors and the others.
And so Johnny K, you know, had a track record with Coast, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. I then found out he was on a top 40 station for many years, KFXM. And so I thought, how long is it going to take to change the way the station sounds? Almost immediately it changed. It went back to the top of the hour timpani roll like they had on Boss Radio in the 60s that KEarth used to have. They had finally said KRTH Los Angeles instead of KEarth 101 Los Angeles for the legal ID. And then I heard If You Leave Me Now by Chicago, followed by I Hear You Knockin' by Dave Edmunds. I was like, okay, there definitely has been a change here because those songs weren't on the station even a month ago. But it was just so exciting to hear, you know, him revamping the oldies format. And it brought new life to it. And plus he also expanded the playlist, which was nice as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about, making things fresh. I came close to working for Johnny K once, but it didn't work out. I had an interview with him, and after the interview, I just didn't feel good about it. So I went back home, bought a case of champagne, and sent it to him and said, no thanks.
Oh. And after KCBQ, we went back to KGB, which by that time was a freeform FM on AM format that Ron Jacobs was programming. How long did you work there for?
Well, I was there when he came in. I was the program director for a while, and they announced that they're going to change the program director, and I thought, well, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Until they told me it was Jacobs. I thought, oh, I'm staying right here. I want to work with Jacobs. And he had, you know, he did the whole different thing, though. He did that freeform thing. But I stuck with him for a while, and I didn't like it, so I went to KFRC.
Isn't that where, didn't Jacobs create what's now known as the San Diego Chicken that's seen in baseball?
Yeah. He was there, and he was responsible for that. Kind of like the Frankenstein chicken. The guy got such a following, he started to. I wasn't there, so I don't know. But I heard that there was a little bit of a ruffled feathers between Jacobs and Chicken because Chicken wanted more. I don't know. I really don't know.
Oh, okay. So
I wasn't there. I saw Rick Liebert a couple times, who was Jacobs, who was working for his right-hand man or something like that. I never got along with him.
Then you went to the Big 610 KFRC. Tell us how you got to, who hired you there?
Who hired me there? I forget. Let me think. I really liked him, but my mind is kind of, I haven't really recovered from being laid back the last couple of days. I'm pretty tired these days. I can't get my speakers to work, and I can't get an app to work, and I can't remember program directors' names. He was only there a short time, and I really liked him. His real name was Phillips.
Mm.
What was his name? That's going to come to me. I'm going to feel very stupid about this because I really love that man.
Mm.
But he left, and I worked with him at KFRC and in his own business as well, which was going into a market and analyzing the entire market, being able to tell you hour by hour where people dial.
Mm.
He had a way of doing that, and he'd get the information and bring it back, and I would help him write it into words to show what happened, you know. It was pretty thorough. It was very good. It was a name for that, too, and I forgot the name of his business. It was very successful.
That's great. What was your favorite moments at KFRC? What was it that stood out? Because that was a legendary station. What did you enjoy most about the Big 610?
Yeah, I can't give you that answer because being at KFRC was actually several sections, and each section had a really wonderful thing going for it. You know, there was the younger version, and then as they got more spiffy and streamlined and different program directors were involved and consultants, then other things happened. So I had everything from being a real straight boss jock and being very successful to ultimately being afternoon drive and using wild tracks and drop-ins. It was really my favorite kind of radio, where you're talking and a little voice comes in and, but it's not the way Dr. Don did it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Don would just have them come in randomly. Mine were actually part of a conversation or a bit.
Oh.
And I had a lot of yes-no answers. I had a couple of voices that gave me yes, I don't know, maybe that's right, Bobby Ocean, or whatever. So I could always include them. You know, it's 3:15 in the afternoon on a beautiful day. Ain't that right, Mr. Goody? That's right, Mr. Bobby. You know, that kind of stuff.
That's cool. I know Emperor Hudson did that as well, yeah. Having the drops and stuff. And of course,
it can be done right. There's different ways to do it, and Dr. Don never did it the way I do it, so I wanted to give it my shot, which was more coordinated and integrated into the show rather than just confetti falling down out of the sky on me.
And Dr. Don Rose was there for many years in Morning Drive.
I was there when he got there, yeah. I thought, this is a mistake. Bringing some East Coast guy in here that's Rip Taylor. It's never going to work, but we'll watch and see. Well, I was proven wrong to my face in the mud wrong. That was, Dr. Don was a hit from top to bottom. Even today at the Classic Car Show, people come up and ask about Dr. Don. And he's been gone for so many years. They have a life-size photo of him sitting there so that people can take a picture with him, you know.
Oh. And what were your memories of him? Did you interact much with him since you were obviously in a different day part? How often did you see each other?
Well, we'd see each other in the station from time to time quite often because he would still be there or something. And he was really the same way in the hallways as he was on the air. He was always telling jokes and in a good mood.
Wow.
I got one Dr. Don story, but you have to let me use a 4-letter word.
Go for it.
Okay. We're in the hallways, and we're all hanging around, and Dr. Don talking with several of us. And the public service woman, who was a strict feminist, was there to do her Sunday show or something, and she saw Dr. Don in the hallway and came up to him and said, Dr. Don, I want to complain about your show to you directly. And he says, well, what's wrong? He said, I don't like the way you depict women. I don't like the way you treat women. And Dr. Don said, well, wait a minute, Miriam. Do you want me to treat you completely equally? And she said, yes, I do. He said, all right, then go fuck yourself. And we all died laughing at that because that's being treated as equal as you get. That's totally equal.
It's true. Oh, man. Oh.
That's a good Dr. John joke.
Oh, man.
I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I did too.
Any other ones you want to share?
When I went to Dr. John's, it was not really a funeral. It was a service of some kind. It was the happiest event ever. It wasn't sad at all. It was jokes from the beginning to the end. He got out of radio because the ultimate stress of dead air, I guess, was bothering his heart. And they said, you stay in, you're going to be dead in 6 months. If you get out, you'll live 10 years more. So he got out, and he really loved being out of it, loved being a grandpa, loved being with his family. And he had about 10 years. And I was really happy to see him that way, too. And the same thing is happening for me. Now that I'm out, I can stop thinking about the show constantly. Turns out my mind does it anyway. My mind thinks in one-liners and jokes because I'm also a cartoonist.
Yeah, I noticed the nice artwork you've drawn of including Mark Dennis as well as others. How long have you been drawing for?
Since I was 7 or 6. I started getting this paper that wraps the shirts from the cleaners, which I use for tracing paper. And I traced Donald Duck cartoons and Walt Disney stuff until I realized I can do these lines without tracing, and kept on going.
I know that some of the Boss survey folders had drawings of some of the DJs. How often was your artwork used for those survey folders?
I did a lot of it at KGB, not necessarily drawing the jocks, but keeping it keeping it more cartoony than real illustrations, although I do that as well. They'd use it every now and then, and at K West, I did extensive work with the sales department to help them get sales flyers out and so on. My artwork, my cartoons, whatever. Cartoons, it turns out there was a survey taken about magazine covers, and the 3 most interesting magazine covers for people, they look right at it, is a little kitten or a little puppy or a cartoon. And cartoons illustrate everything. You know, if it says, stop and think before you grab that cart, you could have a guy in front of a stop sign. You know, just it helps convey the image. When I went to get my first phone in Huntington Beach at Bill Ogden's, there were horrible formulas you had to memorize that had to do with electrical equations and so on. And I would make cartoons of them. And I left behind a bunch of them for the students and they were upcoming, and they thanked me later on. Just to make it easier, you know, to get. It's just, that's all. Because the formula by itself is so raw and dry, but if you have a cartoon representing what that is, somehow it just helps you remember it.
Interesting you mention that, because I remember a couple of years ago I showed my niece, I'm writing a book on the site about game show legend Jack Barry. And when I was about 6 years old, I drew a picture of Jack, still have it. I showed it to my niece, and my niece said, "You should use that for the cover." I'm like, that's interesting. Now that when you mention that, I was like, maybe I should. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I notice about artists of all ilk, whether it's disc jockeys or painters or whatever, they have to go through what is a landmine field of accepting their own stuff and giving it worth. They're hesitant to say, "I'll charge you $500 for that painting." Hell, you can have it for $35. No. You have to value your work, and you can't just give it away. the more you value it, the better it is.
This is the Talkie Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're talking with radio personality and voiceover talent Bobby Ocean. And next time we'll talk about more of how cats, dogs, and cartoons draw people the most. And we'll also talk about a particular talent of Bobby's that got him his first job in radio.